The US has completely pulled out of the Russia-Ukraine peace talks, probably for the better. We're kind of like incentivized to not let the peace happen, right? It seems like the incentive is now to let the war go on indefinitely because the mineral deal. Yeah, it's complicated, but I think we want Ukraine to win, and America wants Ukraine to win, in spite of Trump. US just approved another F-16 sale to Ukraine. Yep, there it is. Yeah, I was thinking about this the other day, because it's a complicated situation. I think that Vladimir Putin made a very earnest effort to influence American politics in a way that would allow him to grab Ukraine. He's been pushing for this for a long time. I think he almost succeeded. I think he did this mostly by sucking up to Trump personally. I think that Trump is just very stupid and very easy to woo with flattery. And I think that Putin was banking on American withdrawal from Ukraine so that Russia could basically have it uncontested. And I think that he did very well at making weird pseudo-isolationist pro-Russian talking points a mainstream conservative position in the United States, but he didn't do it enough to overwhelm one of the main power brokers in the US, which is the military-industrial complex. And the military-industrial complex wants to sell weapons to the US government so the US government can send it abroad. The MIC wants training grounds, testing grounds, to see those weapons used so it can refine them, build new models of them. The MIC wants perma-war, you know? Of course they do. They're using Israel for that. But they want more. After all, as much tech as gets tested in Israel, you know, at least until war breaks out with Iran, Israel's not really engaging in the kind of full-scale conflict that you see over in Ukraine, so the MIC wants war. So I think, and I think it's no coincidence that it was Scott Bessent who signed this deal and who, like, advocated for it, you know, in its signing, rather than Trump being the one who really, like, don't you think that's a little interesting? Trump has been signing all of these executive orders, the big Sharpie, but a massive deal between America and Ukraine that has massive implications for the war down the line. Scott Bessent was the one who got to front that. It's no coincidence that Scott Bessent is one of the more neocon-leaning members of the cabinet. I think the MIC has been letting this pro-Russia wave, this pro-Russia political sort of fad run its course, but it saw an opportunity. Trump, because he's an idiot, thought Putin would end the war after Trump took office, probably because Putin just directly promised him that. When Putin didn't end the war and in fact continued to intensify bombing in civilian areas, Trump felt like he'd been humiliated. He felt like he'd been lied to, so he had a public crash out over it. The MIC recognizes this. Trump, the emperor with no clothes, is now in a position to be more directly influenced, right? So now you swoop in. Hey, what if we established a fund where through joint mutual investment, we can put money into Ukraine, and in return, we get rare earth, like mineral rights, in the future after the war's done. Well, now we have an incentive to make sure the war is won, right? Because our contract is with Ukraine, not Russia. Now, many American industries are monetarily incentivized to ensure that Ukraine wins and that Ukraine gets as much territory back as possible. After all, the more land Ukraine controls, the more resources there are for us to take. But how do you get to the rare earth if the MIC wants the forever war? That's the point. The rare earth is the carrot. It's not the reward. The reward is the war. The rare earth is just the long-term future prospect. It's the sun shining in the distance. It's the incentive to continue to pile in on Ukraine. I don't think this is about the rare earth minerals. I think this is about the MIC, who's sick of the weirdly campus pro-Russia bullshit coming out of the Republican Party. So in a way, this is good for Ukraine because now we're nationally invested in making sure they, if not win, at least like reclaim territory, because we do have that incentive to make sure they have access to their rare earth minerals. The MIC gets what they want because we get to keep selling weapons to Ukraine. Yeah, it's interesting. It's a very weird little, I wonder if they're going to write a book on it. This is just my guess, by the way. A lot of what I'm engaging in right now is speculation, but we don't know, right? The MIC doesn't really like put out a brief. So the MIC wins. The MIC always wins. But yeah, in this case, though, we kind of wanted that because they're winning by selling weapons to Ukraine, which is what we want America to do. I mean, obviously it's bad that the MIC is benefiting from it, but listen, okay? Those weapons are getting sent somewhere, and I'd rather they get sent to Ukraine than Israel. We want to send them weapons, but we don't want a forever war. Well, we want to send them enough weapons that they get as much territory as possible, which is going to take a long time. It also makes me wonder, what are we going to give Ukraine to allow them to actually win? Like, what can we do that would make the difference? Because everything's so entrenched. More detailed satellite data, newer weapons. I don't know. More long-range missiles? Gift them an aircraft carrier? Sure. The drone warfare development happening in Ukraine is actually terrifying, though. I feel like the thing that America could do that would give Ukraine the biggest edge would be our satellite intel. America has by far the best satellite spy network in the world. It's not even close. No other country even comes remotely close. Other countries that want our intel have to borrow it from us. Russia doesn't have it. Russia doesn't have a complex, like satellite spy network. Only we do. And under Biden, because Biden was a massive pussy, we only gave Ukraine limited information, right? When short-term communications were required from Russian generals and they had to move closer to the front lines because their radio towers were getting knocked out, Ukraine was able to kill some high-ranking Russian officials because they literally had to be within like a few dozen miles of the front line. Like the radio signal wouldn't carry that far. America doesn't have that problem. Our soldiers can communicate anywhere at any time, any place, no matter what, because we have the satellite network. Russians, they got to rely on more primitive systems. If we just opened up the satellite spy data to Ukraine, they could be sending drones after every single Russian official in Russia, you know? We wouldn't even have to send them weapons. No wrong, we gave them detailed reconnaissance info all the time. We didn't give them full info. We gave them lots of information specifically on troop movement within Ukraine. But Biden was really anxious about Zelensky striking targets in Russia. So we didn't give them information in Russia. That's why there were times where there were tensions between Biden and Zelensky when Zelensky would do strikes inside Russia, because Biden was worried about the war's escalation. As it is right now, if we wanted to, we could give Ukraine basically a top-down RTS map of the entirety of the front line. I mean, every soldier, every trench, we have all this information. We have an insane spy network. But we haven't been giving them that information in Russia, which we also have access to. We know everything. By the way, Russia's resorted to using child suicide bombers. This isn't hyperbole. It would be a service to the average Russian citizen to end this war quickly by murking their officers. Every Russian general killed brings the war's end closer and potentially saves tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of Russian 14-year-olds' lives. Or Ukrainians. Russian intel services are recruiting Ukrainian civilians, including children and teenagers, to act as suicide bombers at military recruitment centers. Sounds about right. This is like Iran-Iraq war shit. Jokes aside, it's sad how little we value human life. Yeah, I mean, I've valued it from day one in the sense that I want the war to be won by the people who are defending themselves. But yeah, in a general sense, yes, of course, I agree. Russia won't be able to afford troops in Ukraine past 2026 as economy struggles. Yeah, that makes sense, especially if the price of oil stays this low, you know? Again, Russia is effectively a petrostate, so if there are economic turmoils that lower the value of their, refined exports, I think Ukraine can last that long. Not to get, not to jinx it, but I think Ukraine can last indefinitely at this point. It will suck, but Russia has demonstrated that it is literally incapable of any additional surges. There was the initial armored column, and they've had a few attempts at a breakthrough. Remember that period of time 18 months ago where we were hearing a bunch of doom posting about Ukraine losing territory? Take a look at the map change. How much did they lose? They lost nothing. Seriously, in the grand scheme of the war, we're getting, very narrativistic about relatively minute changes in land. And then they gain ground afterwards. It's all trenches, it's all landmines. Russia can't move in. Also, all of Europe is mobilizing to give them arms now. The German defense industry is rearming. It's a whole thing. World War I style gains seems to be the consequence of drone warfare. They did calculations, and a literal snail would have been in Poland by now since the war arrived. Really? I mean, yeah, it's been years, man. On and on it goes. Anyway, yeah, the point that I'm making in terms of like we could help Ukraine win this war pretty easily would be we would just need to provide them satellite data from all of these areas. We've been providing them information pretty regularly within this chunk of land because that's Ukraine, right? So anytime any soldiers make their way in here, they're being monitored, US satellites, we give, we tell Ukraine what the color of their dick tip is, etc. They know everything. The issue isn't about knowing where the troops are. The issue is just like, what do you do about it? There's a limit to how much ammunition you've got, artillery, shells, drones. It's not always easy to get at them. But if you start expanding the range of intel that you give Ukraine, all of a sudden we know the dick tip color of Russian lieutenants, corporals, generals, whatever, further back here. I mean, if you expand it far enough, Ukraine could be sending fleets of thousands of drones out to just, I mean, there'd be no way to hide. It would be, for the Russian military, it would be terrifying on a level that it would allow their leaders to experience fear comparable to that of those fighting at the front lines, because everything would be the front lines. Also, neither Russian or Ukraine has air superiority. Oh God, neither of these countries can afford to be flying jets around. It's all drones. Yeah, drones and landmines. Ukraine's also doing covert ops constantly in Russia's rear. Yeah. Again, like, it's just a satellite data thing. The MIC probably wants to get some more arms sales out. So I don't think... Do you think America could kill Putin if they tried? I mean, we have nukes, so, like, yeah.